In today's video, I'm going to talk about overall the situational awareness and how the different types that are in Hell Let Loose and what overall you need to know in terms of situational awareness to be a better player. Now, looking on this video, it doesn't really seem to be talked about too much in terms of player skill. It doesn't come down to gun skill. It doesn't come down to being better at the game. It just comes down to knowing where you're at, the map awareness, what's going on around you, where your teammates are, and just a bunch of different things that I'm going to talk about that warrants its own video. In the comments below, go ahead and put down maybe some of your awareness stories, like, hey, maybe I did this and I took out a garrison, or something along those lines. I'd like to hear them. I will see pretty much most of the comments that come on, so just go ahead and leave those in the comments, and we're going to get started with today's video about having good situational awareness in many different facets will make you a better player. So briefly, I want to talk about the 5 different types of situational awareness that I'm going to be touching on in today's video. They're the following: common sense awareness, team awareness, class awareness, map awareness, and tactical awareness. Now, depending on other things that maybe I didn't get to, I might throw in a little bit of a miscellaneous, but we'll see about that towards the end of the video. But those are the 5 major awareness types that I'm going to talk about, and just how they should reflect in your situational awareness when playing Hell Let Loose. So when it comes to common sense awareness, it's mostly just don't do any quote-unquote dumb things. Now, what is that? Kind of doing what you see on screen now and charging over an open field. This isn't 1916 at the Somme anymore. This is World War II. Charging over an open field with wave after wave of men died out after 1918. But in better terms, overall, what I mean is, don't charge over open fields where the enemies are waiting for you. Don't charge an enemy tank. Move methodically. And it's important to know your surroundings of, okay, I got a wall right here I can use to get up to the objective. Oh, there's a hedgerow there. Kind of like what you're seeing on screen now, using little holes in this little concrete wall to look for enemies, and just moving as is. Now, it's not bad to always take like a little shortcut, like cutting across here to the next layer of cover, but I also know that there's no one over there. There's an ally over there, I identify, and just moving up cover to cover with my allies. So it's just things like that that I would fall under common sense type stuff. So just making sure you're not running across open fields, knowing where your cover is, where the enemies are shooting at you from, tanks, and just overall knowing what allies you have around you. Just little tiny little bits, at least when you're advancing, especially when you have rando teammates and not necessarily your squad. But this would all fall under common sense type awareness. Next type of awareness I want to talk about now is the team awareness. Now, as the name kind of suggests, it's about the team itself, your team, where they're at, where you're at, and, well, anything in between. If there's one category of player that this affects the most, it's probably tank crews. Since heavy tanks and medium tanks, for the most part, they are the tip of the spear, usually for supporting the infantry and pushing objectives or defending objectives, as they are a main focal point of an offense or defense. Knowing where your team is at all times is crucial to your survival, because if you get outstretched ahead of your team, or your team gets outflanked and you don't realize it, chances are you're going to be satcheled and you're going to have to spend 5 or 10 minutes driving back to the front line in a new tank, if you have the resource to even afford another tank. So as a tank crew especially, now again, goes for not just tank crews, but other infantry, but mostly for a second with the tank crew example, it's important to know where your team is. In this example here, in this clip, there's a bunch of allies around on the windmills objective here on Kursk, where by sitting pretty much in the middle of that, I'm able to sit there and I have allies all around me on an important objective, so my chances of getting satcheled or even outflanked and destroyed by a vehicle is slim to none, because I'm going to have allies around me, they're going to report their positions, and mostly just keep the infantry off our tank. So that's the main thing I want to touch on with that. Now, the other thing is, on an infantry standpoint, say if instead of you're a tank, you're an infantryman, it's important to know where your teammates are pushing from, where they're moving, where they're at in regards to objectives, and just so on. With this knowledge, you're able to kind of set yourself up in a position where you can fit best at least mostly when we get to a tactical standpoint. Now we're throwing an example up here just regarding a warfare example, mostly from an infantry standpoint, since I've already talked about tanks and how they should have team awareness around them. But here's this. So it's warfare, it's FOI. We have the southern edge objective that is the enemy objective, then we have the N30 highway. A lot of the team is spread out in sector E5, marked on screen, and overall it's pretty much attacking from that left side. There's not much in the south, not much in the north, not much in the right side, and there is a couple guys over by N30 highway, but not too many. So on this one I want to talk about is if, say, N30 highway was getting taken, say the enemy was on it, and there really isn't a lot of guys on there. Knowing that, hey, it might be good to redeploy, defend the objective, then go back on the attack, or stay and defend. It depends on the scenario you wish to put yourself in. And then with that, I'll put on the flip side. So say you have everyone at N30 highway for whatever reason, and Southern Edge has maybe a couple guys trying to attack it. Well, it might be good to maybe start putting some more pressure on Southern Edge and move away from N30 highway because it's already well defended. So it's just knowing where your team is, what's going on, whether it's on offensive, whether you're the attacking or defending team, or on warfare, whether you need to put yourself in a defensive position or an attacking position. Now, the last thing I'll talk about is, as an infantryman, it's also important to know where your tanks are. Kind of like what I said about tanks, you know where their infantry is. It's very much on the flip side as well that the infantry need to know where their tanks are. So in this example, there's a tank in sector F7. Appears to be a heavy tank. Just knowing where it's at. Now, I say this because there's very much a lot of times where we think, oh, there's an enemy tank, but really it's one of ours or your allies. So it's important to know, especially if you check your map, that, oh, wait a minute, that's an allied tank, we're good, it's not an enemy. Especially if maybe you get your nations confused and you forget what tanks are on what faction. So that pretty much sums up most of team awareness in a nutshell. Next awareness type I want to talk about is class awareness. Now, in principle, this is pretty simple, but it does take a bit of experience to get down. So if you're a newer player, you're probably still learning about just what every class can do and what weapons they have, such as even down to their individual guns, what devices they have, whether that's a satchel charge, an ammo box, a rocket launcher, a wrench, whatever. This one comes down to knowing the classes in and out, and in a squad composition, knowing what all your squad can do. Say if you have an AT guy, a engineer, a medic, a support guy, an officer, and then insert maybe, I don't know, a rifleman. Just knowing the upside that your squad can do. With this loadout alone, you can keep people alive in some scenarios, build defenses and nodes, take on enemy tanks and vehicles, and build blue line garrisons. And that's just part of that. There's way more you can go into about this, but this one mostly comes down to understanding what your squad can do, what its composition, what all the different classes can do, and just overall what it can do to benefit the team and overall, hopefully, lead you to victory. The fourth type of awareness I want to touch on is map awareness. Another one which really isn't hard in principle, but takes a while to learn, especially in a game with Hell Let Loose having so many maps. Now, the example I have on screen now is of Purple Heart Lane. Now, anyone who has played this map understands this is a lot of rivers, a lot of flooded fields, small little streams, and just overall not a fun place to play on sometimes. Now, why did I pick this map? Well, for two reasons. One, for a lot of the areas that you supposedly can't cross, you can cross. Now, there are several areas with little bridges, I'll zoom in on these locations, that you can cross, but maybe if you haven't played the map before, you wouldn't know about these until you went to them. And there are some areas that don't even have any bridges labeled at all, such as at Dove Pillbox. That's one major example that you can actually cross, but it won't show on the map. It just shows the little stream there, but you can cross at areas. There's a pontoon bridge. I choose this example, at least for that aspect, because it really shows when you know the map, you can use these routes to your advantage. As someone that plays recon a lot and some armor a little bit, knowing these routes are paramount for you to get around the enemy and move where the enemy may not expect you to move, or a place where you can get around the enemy on a map like this that really doesn't have many access routes. So knowing at least all of them or a decent chunk of them will help you against your enemy. Now, the second reason I wanted to pull up this example is just this is a map I had for the default garrison locations on offensive mode, regardless if you're on the Allies or Axis, or the Americans or Germans. So, on a map like this, you have the garrison locations of where they're at if the Germans or the Americans are attacking. So the Americans are attacking on the top part of the map, the Germans are attacking from the bottom part of the map. So if the Germans are attacking, you have the garrison locations in sector D7, E7, and H7. And then if the Allies are attacking or the Americans are attacking, you have the garrison locations C4, E4, and G4. Again, this is just one example. All the maps have these default locations somewhere on the map. It's important to learn these so you can go and take care of them, hopefully before they become too much of a problem for your team, and just so you can find them and take them out when you get up to them. Another big thing about map awareness, it does really come down to more your officers and commanders on this one. Knowing where your outposts and garrisons are in coordination with your team, where your objective is, the enemy objective, or any of these scenarios. If you notice that there's not a garrison around your defense point, put one up, get a support player, ask for supplies, do something. Don't just leave it for someone else to do, because chances are they're not going to do it. Just do it yourself. It'll work out better for everyone in the long run. And overall, if you have any red zone garrisons, maybe see if you can run a supply truck and flank around the enemy. And overall, just knowing where everything is spawn point wise, because these are the backbone of keeping your team in the fight. Without these, you're not winning anything. The last awareness we'll talk about is tactical awareness. So, first things first, have your HUD on. Sure, it's very immersive to not have your HUD on, and I do this from time to time, especially if I want to get nice, clean shots of just what's going on and use it in YouTube videos. But in this example here, I'm on an objective House of the Workers, and it tells me I'm losing the objective. It tells me how much of the capture progress is done. If you don't have your HUD on, this won't show. So it's important to have that on. You have your ammo, who's in your squad, doing what, and so on. Just offers a lot of advantages from a tactical standpoint. Again, it's cool to have it off, but in general, it's probably a good thing to at least have it on, at least, especially if you're battling pretty hard with a team and just knowing what's going on around you, at least without having to constantly look at your map, even though that's something you should be doing anyway. But that's one aspect of tactical awareness. Speaking about maps, as an officer or commander, and even a regular infantryman, it's important to be looking at your map pretty often and see what's going on around you. But that's that. I want to go back to the FOI example now and talk about a couple things regarding tactical awareness. So, first and foremost, this is a warfare mode map, or at least this scenario is. So, you have an attacking point, which is Southern Edge, controlled by the enemy, and N30 Highway, which is the defense point for you. Now, in warfare, you have to hold 3 of the 5 points to win the game, at least to have it held by the end of the match. So Southern Edge is the point you have to take to win the game, or at least have it and then hold it till the end of the game. Now, there are 4 squares in a attack point on warfare mode that you can be in to try and capture an objective, which I'll label the ones out for Southern Edge since we don't actually see the square designators, so I'll mark them out for you. But if you're within these 4 squares, you are technically in the zone to capture Southern Edge. Now, if you're in the circle, your capture progress is higher than if you're outside the circle. Kind of Captain Obvious moment there. So it's important to know that and knowing which squares you can use to, well, capture an objective. So that's that. Now we're going to look at the map from an attacking standpoint. So if I'm looking at the map here, I see that there's a lot of blue dots and outposts on the left side or west side. There's a heavy tank down the south. There looks to be a tank in Southern Edge itself, but for this example, we won't really worry about him. So, right away, there's a problem with this. There's only one angle of attack. So the enemy are going to see this, and they're going to concentrate their fire on that western side, or in this case, the left side of the map. There's no pressure being put on them from any other angle. The other thing I'd also want to point out here is the lack of garrisons, even red zone ones. There's no red zone garrisons in the area. Now, to come build a red zone garrison, you need 100 supplies, and you have to be within the 2 red squares. So it's very easy at that point, you could get a garrison either the west or the east sides. at least without drawing too much attention, either by airdrop or truck. Because once you lose those outposts and the officer's killed, you got to go back to the closest garrisons, which are in the blue zone. So there's that as well. Now, we talked about some problems. Let's talk about some solutions. So, say you're the officer of a squad. Now, you have a couple different ways you can do this. Now, it's important to get some red zone garrisons. And to get the 100 supplies, you can either get a supply truck from command, an airdrop from command, or you can have your guys run support. You just have 2 of them. They swap up support once they drop their supply crate, which is 50 supplies. You build a red zone garrison. It's pretty stealthy. So you have a couple different ways to get garrisons and place them in different areas. Maybe in this case, you have one in the east by the little farm there, and then one in the west, kind of near the outpost. That way, at least you have something to keep on the attack, even if you get pushed out. So, the second thing I kind of already mentioned was widening the front. So, to widen the front, basically, is to attack from other directions. Now, at Southern Edge, it's a little hard, especially if you know the map. There's a lot of open fields, especially on the east or right side, and kind of in the south. And it's hard to get a garrison in the north because it's up against the edge of which you can get garrisons, which is 2 red squares in. So it's important, though, using the tree lines and terrain to your advantage and hopefully put outposts and garrisons in these areas. But any attack, even over some open fields, especially if you have the element of surprise, would be vital to an attack. Because if you're focusing on one flank, they're going to focus on that flank. But if you start widening the front and attack them from different directions, they're going to have to spread out, exposing them to other flanks. So it's very important to widen the front. Don't just do a constant frontal attack. Having awareness regardless of class, whether you're an officer, a rifleman, commander, tank commander, just will help you be a better player overall regardless of skill. And being able to communicate to your teammates and actually have tactical awareness of what's going on around you is probably a big thing. But overall, just having awareness about what's going on around you, where you're at, and everything will make you a better player overall. Maybe a couple things I might have missed. I implore you to leave them in the comments. Every little bit it helps, as you know, it's nice to get other people's takes. I'm not perfect, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you got something out of it, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good day.